So, building those relationships are super important. We talk about it all the time as a school. When your kids know that you care, they're going to listen. They're going to want to be in your class. They're going to want to learn. So, we talked about how you can have that stay in the game. Like, oh, I see that you're starting to kind of move to the left. Your behavior is not where I want it to be. Hey, I know that you know how to do this. Come on, you know what level zero means. Your learning's important. Let's go. Um, Checking in. What's going on with you today? How can I support you? If your child has to, or if a student has to go to a buddy room, or maybe the BMT had to come get them because they were really rowdy, having that restorative conversation before they come back in. So meeting them at the door and saying, oh, I'm so glad you're back. I know that you're going to be ready to come back and learn, making sure they know that you're not still holding on to that behavior that they had before, welcoming them back in the classroom, even if you don't necessarily mean it. And then something else that's super important is that 6-to-1. Our most challenging students need to hear their name positively 6 more times than the one time that you're calling them. So think about that Jeremy in your class, that Jeremy who has a hard time controlling himself. He might have a lot going on at home and it shows in his behavior at school. Every time Jeremy's doing what I've asked the class to do, I'm going to call Jeremy's name. Jeremy's sitting at level 0. Jeremy's turning to page 23. I want him to hear that I notice. I notice that he's doing the right thing, and I want him to know that I like it. I need him to know that. So just think about those students in your class who you're like, oh, well, this internet ain't gonna work for them. Let's try it and make sure you're calling on them every single time you give an MVP, every time you give a direction, and they're doing it right. Call on them and see how that behavior changes. All right, so now it's time for you to practice. Okay, you have this recording sheet in front of you. It says MVP. What do you want your kids to do? What does that MVP look like? And then what is your positive narration going to be? So I want you to think about one of the most difficult transition or time in your class. Is it coming back into the classroom after recess or lunch? Is it transitioning from literacy to math where they have to go get their math workbooks and they have to bring them down? Is it transitioning in the hallway? Maybe just walking in the hallway is hard for your class. Whatever that hardest time of day is for you, I want you to write it down. And I want you to think about, what do you expect your kids to do? Are you expecting them to line up at level 0? Are they having a hard time with that? Are you expecting them to transition? Maybe it's 4th and 5th grade and they're having a hard time in the hallway, transitioning to the next class. Whatever that is that you're working towards, I want you to write down what is it you're expecting them to do. And then I want you to script your MVP. So if I'm having a hard time getting my kids lining up before we enter the hallway, and so when we go in the hallway, they're crazy and the line is a mess, or it's taking us 10 minutes to get out of the classroom, I want my kids to line up in hall and I want them to be in line order. That's what I want. And so guess what my MVP is going to say? When I say line, you're going to line up in your line order, level 0 in hall. And they know what hall is because we've already talked about what hall is, right? And then I'm positively narrating. So-and-so is walking to the line. So-and-so is in line order. Alicia is at level 0. Elijah is in hall, ready to enter the hallway. Script it out. And include your cue to start. Include that cue. So it's not just line up, level 0, go. It's when I say line, because then you know they're listening. When I say line, I want you to line up, level 0 in hall. Line. Make sure that they're waiting for that cue. And don't forget that cue. Sometimes we want to give them MVP and then they're just sitting there and you're like, hello. Don't forget the cue. And my cues are different. I don't always say go when I say go, because they get tired of hearing that and I get tired of saying it. So my cue usually goes along with what I'm asking them to do. So if I'm going to ask them to transition to the carpet, when I say carpet, walking, level 0, sitting in star. When I say line, walking, level 0, lining up in line order in hall. When I say math, walk back to your seat, grab your math workbook and your pencil, and you're turning to page 23. Whatever it is that you're asking them to do, make sure you have that cue. All right. So now that you've had time to script, it's time to share. So you're going to actually find a partner and you're going to rock, paper, scissors to see who goes first. And I want you to practice delivering your scenario. Practice as if you're delivering it to your class. Like, I know it's kind of silly to kind of do it with an adult friend, but really practice like you're going to be doing it in front of your kids.